Sorry, the Mongols exchanged letters with the Pope?
Indeed, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's just blows my mind right there.
Yeah, so at some point, when the Mongols moved into, first they were chasing the Kipchak through the Russian steppes.
And
then
the Kipchaks kind of
kept going west. Indeed,
kept going
so
west and came to Hungary
or
Poland or something, right?
Yeah, they took refuge first with the Rus princes. So Russia is not a country at that time; it's just a sort of sequence of principalities. They took refuge with them. The Mongols chased them there, took over the Rus, the regions of the Rus. Then they fled even further, all the way to Hungary, where the king accepted them. Bela IV accepted them, and then this was used by the Mongols as a reason to then attack Hungary. And so after that, when Western Europe sort of suddenly realized what was happening, there was this sort of frantic scramble for information. And that's when the Pope sent certain, it's someone, I read a book recently that called him the most unlikely James Bond ever, who was a very overweight priest, was sent to visit the Mongols. And his name was John of Plano Carpini, a Franciscan monk. And he was sent to find out what he could about the Mongols. So he went in the 1240s and went all the way to Mongolia and delivered the letters from the Pope to the Khan at the time, Guyuk, and then went back all the way back with his responses. And then in the 1250s, another monk from Flanders, William of Rubruck, went as well. And so there's sort of there's a sort of demand for information as they're going out to try and find what has just happened. So we have a lot of interesting accounts from these European sources as well. And they're sort of bumbling their way through Asia and committing all sorts of faux pas, not knowing things. And
I'm sorry, but this just sounds incredible yet again. That this fat Dominican friar was like the agent who was like an intelligent agent who was collecting, who was going slowly towards the Mongols and collecting information.
Drunkenly making his way.
Making all sorts of faux pas. What kind of faux pas was he making, for example?
Do you know I mean, it's just, obviously confusing people groups and things like that. And there's a sort of Mongol taboo about stepping on the threshold of the tent. Mm-hmm. And this was so he does that, of course, and there's all these things that both of them seem to have struggled with the expectations, and so they didn't really realize that also what's part of many societies, but gift giving is really important. So in order to sort of get things to happen, you have to give a gift, and they, as what you expect from sort of Franciscans and Dominicans, they're poor, right? They're not supposed to be, sort of loaded with gifts and things. So they ended up having to give a lot of the sort of, the Bibles they had, things like that, in order to move on. But then they were left with very little. They really struggled. And you can see that in their writings, that they really are trying to explain for future travelers, make sure you have a lot of things to give, because otherwise you won't get anywhere. And so, this was, later travelers did realize this, and that they knew what they had to do. But these early ones, it was quite a struggle for them. They seem to have been able to offend no end as well. But
I'm sorry, but I didn't realize that our conversation is going to be so amusing and full of these like really funny anecdotes. That literally sounds like somebody sent me on a diplomatic mission. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, well, this is of course, when in this situation where you don't know. The world is not connected, right? So you know very little about, let's say, even the next city over, the next village over. And when you're talking about the types of distances that they were traveling, that they were really not aware. And this is actually one of the interesting things about this period, is that Western Europe is quite unaware of the rest of the world. And when you look at it in comparison to the Mongols, I mean, they basically connect all of Eurasia, and they have a very keen awareness of all these different people groups. And this is what's actually fascinating when we see it from this sort of Western civilized perspective, is that they were far more aware of the sort of differences between people groups and things like that than the West was at the time. And so, yeah, it's a really fascinating moment when you see that the Mongols are connecting these societies. So societies that have not really had these connections before, like China and Iran, or to an extent, but to a much greater degree during the Mongol period. And this is what, many sort of interesting books have been written about, these sort of exchanges that happened between societies.